These people are dangerous. How to spot envy in 3 seconds. Imagine this. You're excited about something. Maybe you landed a new job, started a passion project, or even just shared a personal victory with a friend. You expect them to celebrate with you, to feel your joy, to uplift you. But instead, there's a pause, a flicker in their eyes, a moment where something feels off. They smile, they say, "That's great," but you sense an energy shift, a hesitation, a subtle coldness. You brush it off, maybe you're overthinking, but soon the signs become clearer. Their support feels forced, their words, though kind, have an undertone that doesn't quite match the surface, and then it hits you. This person is not happy for you. In fact, they might even resent your success. This is envy, and it's one of the most dangerous emotions lurking in human nature. Unlike jealousy, which is the fear of losing something you already have, envy is pure resentment. It's the pain of seeing someone else have what you don't. And here's where it gets really insidious. Envy isn't always loud. It's not always obvious. It can be silent, masked, hidden behind compliments and smiles. But if left unchecked, it can lead to sabotage, betrayal, and in extreme cases, history has shown that envy has led to wars, assassinations, and the downfall of entire civilizations. But you don't need to look at history to see its consequences. You've likely seen it in your own life. A friend who suddenly distances themselves when you start succeeding, a colleague who quietly undermines you, a family member who can't stand that you're thriving while they feel stuck.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
So the question is, how do we spot envy? How do we see it before it turns into something toxic? How can we detect it in just 3 seconds? The first sign is subtle but powerful: inconsistency between words and energy. People can fake words, but they can't fake energy. Words are controlled by the conscious mind, but energy, body language, micro-expressions, tone of voice, that's controlled by the subconscious. And the subconscious doesn't lie. When you share good news, does their energy rise with you, or does it subtly drop? Do their words say, "Congratulations," while their tone says, "I wish that was me"? Do they blink a little too slowly, hesitate just a fraction of a second before responding? That's the first tell. The second sign: backhanded compliments or passive-aggressive remarks. Envious people often can't hide their resentment entirely, so it leaks out in disguised negativity. Instead of saying, "That's amazing, you deserve it," they might say, "Wow, must be nice to have connections." Instead of genuinely celebrating you, they add a little sting. "That's great, but isn't that industry really unstable?" Or, "You got lucky." These subtle jabs reveal their inner turmoil. They can't openly admit their envy, but they also can't fully suppress it. The third sign: distant support. They technically support you, but not fully. They don't openly tear you down, but they also don't uplift you. They might say, "I'm happy for you," but they don't engage deeply. They don't ask follow-up questions. They don't share your excitement. They might even avoid you after your success. Why? Because every interaction with you now reminds them of what they lack. Your success highlights their stagnation, and instead of using that as motivation, they turn it into bitterness. Now here's the real danger. Envy rarely stays passive. If left unchecked, it festers. And when envy festers, it seeks destruction. Sometimes that destruction is self-sabotage. They'll tear themselves down because they can't handle their own emotions. But more often, envy turns outward. They'll gossip about you. They'll plant doubts in others' minds. They'll find ways, small or large, to bring you down to their level. Because if they can't rise, they don't want you to rise either. So what do we do? How do we protect ourselves? And more importantly, how do we make sure we don't fall into envy ourselves? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. We've all felt it. Every single one of us. Maybe not in its most toxic form, but we've all experienced that sharp sting of seeing someone else get what we wanted. A promotion, a relationship, recognition, success. We've all had that moment of why them and not me? And this is where we face a critical choice. Do we let envy consume us, or do we use it as a tool for growth? Because envy, at its core, is just misplaced admiration. It's proof that we desire something, and if we can shift our mindset, we can use envy as fuel rather than poison. But how? How do we turn envy into something productive rather than destructive? And how do we deal with envious people without letting them drain us? The hidden war, how envy destroys relationships and minds without a sound. Envy is not just an emotion, it's a war, often silent, waged in the minds of those who feel it, slowly poisoning their relationships, distorting their perception of reality, and warping their sense of self-worth. It's one of the few emotions that doesn't just hurt the person who feels it, but actively seeks to hurt others as well. Unlike sadness, which is inward-facing, or anger, which bursts out like a fire, envy is like a slow, creeping poison. It doesn't need to scream, it operates in whispers, in glances, in the subtle withdrawal of warmth, in the quiet decision to root against someone rather than for them. And the most dangerous part? It often goes unnoticed, both by the person feeling it and the person being envied, until the damage has already been done. Look around at history, at literature, at mythology. Envy has shaped the course of human events more than almost any other force. It was envy that drove Cain to kill Abel, unable to bear the thought of his brother's favor. It was envy that led to the betrayal of Julius Caesar, as those closest to him could not stand his rise in power. It was envy that shattered friendships, broke families, and turned allies into enemies. And yet, when we think of dangerous emotions, we rarely name envy first. Why? Because unlike anger or hatred, envy rarely announces itself. It disguises itself as fairness, as skepticism, as just being realistic. It hides behind justifications like, they don't deserve it, or they got lucky, or I'm just looking out for them. But the truth is, envy is not about fairness. It's about power. It's about the unbearable feeling of seeing someone else have what you crave and the subconscious desire to either take it from them or see them lose it so the playing field feels even again. And this is why envious people are dangerous. Not because they always act out directly, but because their very presence warps reality. Their energy changes the air in a room. Their thoughts, even unspoken, carry weight. They may not betray you outright, but they will not protect you either. They may not attack you publicly, but they will not defend you in private. They may not celebrate your failures openly, but they will feel relief when you stumble. And this energy, this silent malice, is corrosive. It eats away at the foundation of trust, at the authenticity of relationships, at the joy of success. And then comes the hardest part. What do you do when you realize someone envies you? Do you confront them? Do you cut them off? Do you try to fix it? The truth is, you cannot fix envy in someone else. It's not your job to shrink yourself to make them comfortable. It's not your responsibility to dim your light so they don't feel the sting of comparison. The best thing you can do is protect your energy, set boundaries, and understand that not everyone will be able to handle your success. Some people only love you when you're struggling because it makes them feel safe. Some friendships are built on shared hardship rather than shared growth, and when you rise, those friendships break, not because you have wronged them, but because your success is a mirror reflecting back what they haven't yet achieved. So what do we do? How do we protect ourselves from the slow, creeping destruction of envy? The first and most important step is awareness. You cannot fight what you cannot see. When you achieve something, when you rise, when you become more, pay attention to the people around you. Who celebrates you fully, with no hesitation? Who asks questions with genuine curiosity rather than transactional politeness? Who remains consistent in their warmth, their support, their presence? And on the other side, who starts to pull away? Who gives compliments that don't feel quite right? Who suddenly becomes hypercritical, questioning every move you make? Who stops mentioning your name when they talk about success, even though they once did? Envy doesn't always look like direct hostility. It often looks like distance, like quiet resentment, like a shift so small that you only notice it in hindsight. But here's where it gets even deeper. What about when you feel envy? Because if we're honest, we've all been on both sides. We've all scrolled through social media and felt that tightness in our chest when we see someone doing what we wish we could do. We've all had moments where we felt left behind, overlooked, unseen. And if we're not careful, that feeling can turn toxic. It can make us bitter rather than inspired. It can turn admiration into resentment. It can make us root for people's failure rather than their success. And when we do that, we don't just hurt others, we hurt ourselves. Because envy is a distraction. It keeps us focused on what others have instead of what we can create. It tricks us into thinking that someone else's win is our loss, when in reality, success is not a zero-sum game. So how do we break free? How do we turn envy into something useful rather than destructive? The secret is simple but powerful. Transform envy into information. Instead of asking, why do they have that and not me, ask, what does their success reveal about what I truly want? Envy is a map. It points us to our deepest desires. If we feel envious of someone's career, it means we crave purpose. If we feel envious of someone's relationships, it means we long for connection. If we feel envious of someone's confidence, it means we desire self-assurance. And once we decode this, envy stops being a curse and starts becoming a teacher. But that's only half the battle. The real test is this: can you celebrate others even when they have what you want? Can you clap for someone else's success while still working towards your own? Can you look at someone thriving and feel inspiration rather than insecurity, because that is the ultimate power move? That is freedom. When you reach a place where someone else's win does not feel like your loss, you become untouchable. You step out of the cycle of comparison, of bitterness, of resentment, and into a mindset of abundance. But there's still one final piece left: the most dangerous type of envy, the kind that masquerades as something else entirely, and if you don't recognize it, it can destroy you from the inside out. The shadow of envy, when admiration turns into silent sabotage. There is an envy so insidious, so deeply hidden, that even the person feeling it may not realize what's happening. This is not the loud, obvious kind of envy, the kind that rolls its eyes at your success or openly questions your worth. No, this is something far more dangerous. It begins as admiration. It looks like respect. It even disguises itself as loyalty. But underneath, it festers, growing into something that no longer wants to see you rise. This is the envy that comes from those closest to you, the ones who once praised you, who once supported you, who once stood by your side. And then, without warning, without explanation, something shifts. They still smile, they still act like nothing has changed, but the energy is different, the warmth is gone. Suddenly your wins don't feel as celebrated, your presence doesn't feel as welcomed, and before you even realize what's happening, the invisible sabotage begins. This is the kind of envy that hurts the most because it comes from those we trust. It's the friend who once encouraged you but now subtly discredits you. The mentor who once lifted you up but now seems indifferent. The family member who once saw your potential but now downplays your achievements. And the worst part? They may not even be fully aware they're doing it. This type of envy is not always conscious. Sometimes it sneaks up on the person feeling it. What once was admiration turns into comparison, and comparison turns into resentment. They see your growth, your success, your evolution, and instead of inspiring them, it reminds them of everything they haven't done. And instead of dealing with their own discomfort, they turn that discomfort toward you. Not in the form of direct attacks, but in small, almost unnoticeable ways. They stop mentioning your name in rooms where it matters. They withhold opportunities they once would have shared. They downplay your accomplishments in conversations with others. They won't tear you down outright, but they also won't push you forward anymore. And this is where we face a brutal truth. Not everyone who starts with you will stay with you. Some people only support you when you're on their level. The moment you rise, the moment you step into something bigger, something beyond what they expected, they feel left behind. And instead of growing with you, they pull away. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your success forces them to confront their own stagnation. And that is uncomfortable, that is painful. And for some, it's easier to let that pain turn into quiet sabotage than it is to face it head on. So what do? How do you handle this kind of envy, the kind that hides in the people you once trusted? The first instinct is often to confront it, to demand an explanation, to ask, why have you changed? Why don't you support me like you used to? But the truth is, most envious people will never admit their envy. They will deny it, rationalize it, twist it into something else. Because admitting envy means admitting weakness, admitting insecurity, admitting that they have allowed someone else's success to make them feel small. And most people would rather walk away than face that truth. So instead of seeking explanations, seek clarity. Pay attention to actions, not words. If someone's presence in your life feels different, if their energy no longer matches their words, if their support feels more like toleration than genuine encouragement, believe it. Don't chase after the past version of them. Don't shrink yourself to make them comfortable. Growth comes with loss, and sometimes that loss includes people you never thought you'd lose. It's painful, but it's necessary. Because the alternative is worse. Keeping people around who secretly want to see you fail, who smile in your face but hesitate when it's time to push you forward. But here's where it gets even deeper. How do you make sure you don't become this person? Because the truth is, none of us are immune. If we're not careful, we can become envious in ways we don't even recognize. We can start off as someone's biggest supporter, only to feel that twinge of resentment when they surpass us. And if we don't address it, if we don't confront it, we will become the very thing we fear. So ask yourself, can you genuinely celebrate someone else's success, even when it highlights your own insecurities? Can you clap for others when they achieve what you're still working toward? Can you admire without letting it turn into comparison? Because that is the test. That is the difference between envy and inspiration. And the moment you choose inspiration over envy, you unlock something powerful. You free yourself from the chains of comparison, from the need to compete, from the silent war that envy wages on the mind. But there is still one final piece, the most dangerous aspect of all, the way envy can turn into self-sabotage, the way it doesn't just destroy relationships, but can destroy you from the inside out. The silent killer, how envy destroys you from within without you even noticing. Envy does not just damage relationships. It does not just turn friends into strangers, allies into rivals. If left unchecked, it does something far worse. It destroys you. Not from the outside, not in an obvious dramatic way, but in a slow, corrosive process that eats away at your joy, your confidence, your ability to create. Envy is not just an emotion, it is a mental prison. It keeps you fixated on what others have, trapping you in a cycle of resentment and self-doubt. You start measuring your worth based on comparison rather than progress. You stop focusing on building your own path because you are too busy watching someone else walk theirs. And, here's the most dangerous part, envy does not motivate, it paralyzes. It convinces you that you are behind, that you are losing, that no matter what you do, someone else will always be ahead. And when you believe that, you stop trying. You sabotage yourself. The moment envy takes root in your mind, it begins to distort your reality. You no longer see other people's success as proof that success is possible. You see it as proof that you are failing. You no longer celebrate greatness, you resent it. You no longer take action toward your goals, you procrastinate. You make excuses, you convince yourself that it's too late, that you're not good enough, that the world is unfair. And in doing so, you create the very failure you feared. Because envy does not inspire growth. It does not push you forward. It only drains you, poisons you, makes you bitter instead of better. But here's the truth most people never realize. Envy is a choice. It is not something you are cursed with. It is something you can reject. The moment you stop seeing life as a competition, the moment you stop measuring yourself against others, the moment you shift your mindset from scarcity to abundance, envy loses its power. Because the reality is, success is not limited. Someone else winning does not mean you are losing. Someone else's achievements do not take away from your potential. When you begin to see others as proof of what is possible, rather than threats to your own worth, everything changes. You go from resentment to inspiration, from comparison to creation, from envy to empowerment. So the real question is this: will you let envy control you? Will you allow it to dictate your emotions, your actions, your mindset? Or will you take back your power? Because the truth is, the most successful, fulfilled people in the world are not the ones who never feel envy. They are the ones who refuse to let it hold them back. They are the ones who recognize that the only competition that matters is the one with who you were yesterday. And that is the ultimate freedom. To wake up every day, focus not on what others have, but on what you are building. To trade envy for inspiration. To stop watching and start doing. Because in the end, envy only has the power you give it. And the moment you stop feeding it, you win.